Hi guys, it's that time again. Shorts, shorts of sorts. Yours truly, Ren City, doing the thing like he does, talking in the third person like apparently I do here and there. But we're gonna start this episode just like we do every episode of Shorts of Sorts, honoring the people that wore the jersey that coincides with our jersey number. So let's do it. We'll start with number 58, being we're in episode 58, one of the most feared defensive players ever to grace the field. I am talking about Jack Lambert. Jack Lambert went to Kent State University with MAC Defensive Player of the Year. He played alongside two college football coaches down the road, Nick Saban, Gary Pinkel, you might have heard of them, teammates of Lambert in college. Wow, excuse me. This led to the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting him in the second round of the 1974 draft. And like other great linebackers mentioned on this podcast, a lot of people thought he was undersized to play the position, but his unique abilities enabled him to play deeper in coverage in the middle of the field. Usually linebackers stop the run, maybe blitz, but they had him playing what would be kind of known as the Tampa 2 defense nowadays, letting that athleticism help out in the passing game. And when Henry Davis, the starter, got hurt, they rolled with Lambert. He'd only win NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he was a huge part of the Steelers winning their first ever Super Bowl, Super Bowl IX over the Minnesota Vikings. That was just the tip of the iceberg for the impact Jack Lambert would have on the NFL. I mentioned his athleticism. He was also an intimidating dude. He'd smash people, he'd knock people down. Like, the hits he had would not be allowed, a lot of them today. Plus, he was missing his four upper teeth, so when you looked at him, he always had this, like, intimidating look to them. I guess they were knocked out during a pickup basketball game, and, he just wore fakes when outside of football, but on the field, he'd take them out, put the paint on, try to scare you. He'd win like I said, he won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He'd also go on to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year a few years later. The 70s were a good time to be a Steeler fan. Like I mentioned, their first Super Bowl. They'd go on to win another three that decade, one of the most successful decades by any team. And Lambert was a huge part of that. And he was like I said, one of the best defenders in the game. Combined with the steel curtain, that defensive line that was one of the best in the game, with them occupying linemen, he could really blow people up. He'd make 9 Pro Bowls, 6 first team All Pros, 2 second team All Pros. Like I said, consistently great. But in his last NFL season, he'd have a big battle with turf toe, and the turf toe won. He'd have to retire from the game. But like I said, he's an icon in Pittsburgh. He's got acknowledgments from the franchise. He's in the Steelers all-time team, Steelers Hall of Honor. I was surprised this 58 isn't retired by the franchise, but that's not really a him thing. That's a Pittsburgh thing. They have not really retired a lot of people's numbers. 3 players have their jerseys retired: Ernie Stautner, Joe Green, and posthumously Franco Harris, who I talked about in episode 32. His jersey's kind of unofficially retired. No one's been issued it since he retired, but it's just not hanging up. But anyway, Lambert was also named in the NFL 1970s Decade Team, the 80s All-Decade Team, the NFL 75th and 100th Anniversary Team. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and as of now, like I said, that 58 isn't retired, but at Kent State, where he played for the Golden Flashes, he wore number 99, and that is retired by his university, his alma mater. But I mean, if you've watched classic football footage, you've probably seen shots of Jack Lambert. I know you have. I was lucky enough to have my dad tell me about him. He loved the Steelers. So yeah, he knew a lot about those teams. Next up on the 58 is another linebacker and another damn good one. I'm talking about Derek Thomas, the Kansas City Chiefs legend, who some consider one of the best pass rushers of his generation, and he was going up against a lot of good players there. But we'll paint this amazing picture of Derek Thomas starting in Alabama, where he lit it up. Twice named first team All SEC and was a unanimous All American his senior season. He still holds the record for most sacks in Alabama's history. Also holds the 2 highest single season totals with 27 and 18. And he holds the record for most sacks in a game by a Crimson Tide player with 5. And if you know the people that come through Alabama, that just shows you how impressive those numbers are. This play led to the Chiefs selecting him 4th overall in the '89 draft. It would only take his second game to register a sack. ending that season with 10 sacks, making the Pro Bowl and winning NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. The following season, Thomas would set an NFL single game record with 7 sacks in one game against the Seahawks. Seahawks quarterback Dave Krieg must have had nightmares of that 58, but Krieg did get the last laugh as Thomas whiffed on his chance for an 8 sack. Krieg threw the game winning touchdown. It's a play that Thomas really said haunted him throughout his career, which is amazing. Like, he had 7 sacks already, but that's wild. That same season, Thomas would finish with 20 sacks, which was a Chiefs franchise record until Justin Houston broke it in 2014 with 22 sacks. But man, Thomas was a force on some really good Kansas City teams that were really competitive. He'd make 9 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros, and even led the NFL in forced fumbles on 2 different occasions. In the 99 seasons, Thomas is 11th in the NFL. He registered a career-low 7 sacks, his last coming in Week 15 against the Steelers. And you're like, why are you highlighting that sack there? Well, it was the last of his career. In late January, Thomas was driving to Kansas City International Airport during a snowstorm as he was off to St. Louis with some friends to watch the upcoming NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Buccaneers. However, Thomas's SUV would go off the interstate during this winter storm, go off the interstate. The passengers were, one of them was wearing a seatbelt, one of them was not. Thomas was also not wearing a seatbelt. The 2 people in the vehicle not wearing a seatbelt, they were launched. The one guy wearing a seatbelt, he survived and was fine. Derek Thomas was paralyzed from the chest down. The other passenger killed instantly. So like I said, Thomas did survive the crash, but paralyzed from the chest down. Obviously, career's done, life's different. He was in a hospital, and as he was getting transferred from a bed to a wheelchair, he suffered a cardiac arrest and died as a result of pulmonary embolism, massive blood clot that developed in his legs and traveled to his lungs. I mean, Derek Thomas was only 33 years old and looking to have a bounce back year. Just so sad. Like, he survived that terrible crash, and dealing with paralysis, I could only imagine, and just trying to think if he could ever walk again, and then just go like that. Just such a sad story to one of the best pass rushing linebackers ever. Like, imagine him in today's game. How insane would that be? Like, just such a sad story. He's named in the NFL All 90s team. Chiefs retired Derek Thomas as number 58, and he was inducted into the Chiefs Hall of Fame. He was also inducted to the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of the best Kansas City players ever to do it, and you see how talented that roster is nowadays, and someone who just passed away far too young. Like I said, 33 years old. Wow, it's crazy. Sticking with the NFL, we'll stick with great linebackers. We're at 58. This guy played mostly for the New York Giants. I'm talking about Carl Banks. He played college ball at Michigan State, where he was a beast, being named first-team All-American his senior season, leading to the New York Giants selecting him 3rd overall in the '84 draft. He'd make an immediate impact, getting named to the All-Rookie team. His best season came in '87 when he'd get his first and only first-team All-Pro nod, as well as a trip to the Pro Bowl. He was an integral part of those tough New York Giants defenses known as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. You might remember me talking them up in his more famous teammate, Lawrence Taylor, in episode 56. Banks was a massive player in that Super Bowl 21 win, though. His 14 tackles was a big part of why they crushed the Broncos so bad. And he was also a part of that Super Bowl 25 winning team that beat the Bills. We remember Scott Norwood missing his kick, leading to the Giants' victory. And Banks would leave the Giants in free agency to join the NFC rival Washington Redskins, as they were called. But he was released, and after a season, he would wrap up his career with the Cleveland Browns. Banks was named the All-1980s All-Decade team and was honored by the Giants, entering their Ring of Honor. He's a very productive linebacker on some really good teams. I think, it's great playing next to great players, but I think playing next to Lawrence Taylor kind of overshadowed him a bit, Maybe they took him for granted. But regardless, we'll shout out Carl Banks here. We'll continue with NFL players, keeping that linebacker train going. The next 58, Wilber Marshall. Florida-born Marshall would end up playing for the Florida Gators and was one of the best Gators to come through the swamp. He was named first-team All-SEC 3 times and a 2-time consensus All-American. His collegiate play led to the Chicago Bears taking Marshall 11th overall in the '84 draft. He joined one of the best defenses ever, and he was a big part of that legendary 15-1 1985 team that went to the Super Bowl 20, where they absolutely murdered the Patriots. There were two plays in that season that really stood out for Marshall, though. One where he hit Lions quarterback Joe Ferguson, knocking him right out. It's crazy. The other was in 1985 in the NFC Championship game against the Rams, where the snow was coming down. Fumble was there. Marshall picked it up, and he ran alongside William the Refrigerator Perry all the way to the end zone. A highlight still loved in Chicago to this day. Marshall would become the first NFL free agent in 11 years to join another team. He joined the Washington Redskins, as they were called, the team that had knocked his former team out of the playoffs each of the two previous seasons. And Marshall would have good seasons in Washington, getting one first team All Pro and one second team All Pro with a Pro Bowl to boot. More importantly, though, his second season in Washington would wind up with Washington beating the Bills in Super Bowl 26, the second Super Bowl ring of Wilbur Marshall's career. After his time in Washington, he'd wrap his career up playing for the Oilers, Cardinals, and Jets. He had a really good career, getting honored by two franchises, getting named one of the 100 greatest Bears, one of the 80 greatest Redskins. I don't know if I can even say that, but that's what they're called. But Wilbur Marshall is also one of only 15 players in NFL history to have over 20 career sacks, 20 career interceptions. Like, that's pretty good. His most prestigious numbers were in college, though, and he was inducted into the Florida Football Ring of Honor and the University of Florida Athletics Hall of Fame. He was also inducted to the College Football Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, like a lot of physical players in the NFL, Marshall's post-football life has been tough. He's dealt with numerous injuries stemming from his playing days, and his health has not been the greatest. Yes, he struggles to move around, even just at the age of 61. I feel like he's a guy maybe not talked enough at linebacker. Maybe a similar situation like Carl Banks. When you have that much talent around, you can sometimes get lost in the shuffle. But another linebacker, we see you there. Staying with the gridiron for the next 58, we'll go to another linebacker. This one's currently playing in the NFL, though. I'm talking about Buffalo Bills' Matt Milano. He played college ball at Boston College, where that would lead to the Bills selecting him in the 5th round of the 2017 draft. He'd start the season in a backup role, backing up Ramon Humber. But when he'd go down, Milano would step in, and he'd do so well that he'd take his job, and he never looked back. In his second season, while playing well, he'd have a broken fibula, and he'd have to have surgery to repair that. The next season, he'd return from injury, help the Bills get back to the postseason after their playoff drought, and he's emerged into a pretty good linebacker here. In 2022, his amazing play led to his first Pro Bowl and first team All-Pro selection. He signed a 2-year contract extension to stay with the Bills. However, a nasty injury would hit Milano again, this time a season-ending fracture in his leg in Week 5 against the Jaguars, ending his season. He's looking to return to his all-pro play pre-injury, and I'm hoping that he can get back on the field and do his thing. The Bills' defense is totally going to be revamped, so a lot of pressure will be on Milano's very capable shoulders. I wrap this portion of the great NFL players who wear 58, not with a linebacker, we're switching it up, but an offensive lineman. One of the best in the game right now, even at the age of 23. I'm talking about big offensive tackle, Penei Sewell. Sewell was a beast at the University of Oregon. First team All-Pac-12 and unanimous All-American his last season. He opted out of the 2020 season due to the COVID-19 pandemic and entered the 2021 draft, where the Lions would select him 7th overall. He'd start 16 of 17 games, only missing the finale when he was put inactive. This stellar play got him named to the All-Rookie team, and his sophomore season, he'd make his first Pro Bowl. Last season, the Detroit Lions had one of their best seasons in years and generations, and Penei Sewell was a huge part of that, making another Pro Bowl and getting his first team All-Pro nod. Lions are hot right now, and in order to be successful, a lot of pressure is going to be on Sewell to keep up this elite play. Like I said, we're leaving the football field. We're going to the baseball diamond. The first number 58 that comes to mind is reliever Jonathan Papelbon. He played college ball in the SEC with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I almost said Mud Dogs from, what was that, with the Water Boy. Anywho, he was originally drafted in the 40th round of the MLB draft by the Oakland Athletics. Yeah, the 40th round. That was known as the Moneyball draft, where a lot of those picks were used in the book Moneyball. I've read the book. Still weird, I haven't seen the movie, but it's a good book. The A's were banking on Papelbon to leave school early, but he was like, nah, dog, I'm going to graduate here in college. He graduated from Mississippi State where the Red Sox would draft him in the following year's draft in the 4th round, and he'd make his debut with the Red Sox just a few years later. They had hopes of making him a starter in the rotation, but after Red Sox closer Keith Foulke struggled, Papelbon got the call and he ran with it, earning an All-Star nod. He'd continue to thrive, and 2007 was probably his best season, making the All-Star game again. He'd win Delivery Man of the Year. The Red Sox would win the 2007 World Series, sweeping the Colorado Rockies. Papelbon would make 2 more All-Star appearances as a Red Sox before leaving in free agency to join the Phillies, signing the largest deal for a reliever at the time. He wouldn't be as successful as he was in Boston, but he'd still make 2 more All-Star games and was also part of a combined no-hitter in a win over the Braves in 2014. Papelbon was getting on the nerves of some people in the organization, and it seemed mutual. He expressed desire to get traded and was shipped off to Washington, where, again, he couldn't live up to those past successes of Boston and was more known for kind of being a prick. But we all remember that moment in the dugout where he and Bryce Harper got into it, and he decided to be like, Dylon in the Chappelle Show and decided to choke him right there, choking a legend right in the dugout. But yeah, he was a really good pitcher. Known, like I said, kind of for being a prick. His behavior got the best of him sometime, but a very dominant reliever. He's in the Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame and is their franchise leader with 219 saves. And it's also amazing. He's the Phillies franchise leader in saves at 113. So you can say what you want about the guy. He was damn good when he was on his game. The other baseball player that comes to mind with 58 is a current one, right-handed pitcher for the Mariners, Luis Castillo. The Dominican Republic-born Castillo originally signed with the San Francisco Giants as an international free agent. He wouldn't get called up to the big show for the Giants, was traded to the Marlins, where again he wouldn't get called up. He'd get traded to the Reds, where finally he'd make his MLB debut. After some success, he'd be named the opening day starter for 2019, boosting his confidence and leading to his first All-Star game of his career. He'd struggle a bit the following seasons, as the Reds did as well, and in 2021 he shared a lead with MLB losses and actually led the NL in walks. Following season, he'd bounce back and make an All-Star game, getting traded to the Mariners, where he's done pretty good there, signing a 5-year deal, and he made the 3rd All-Star game of his career last season. He's off to a bit of a struggle this season, starting 0-4 on the season as of recording. We'll leave the baseball dime and go to the hockey rink. The next 58 is still currently playing the NHL, still rocking it with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Great defensive player, Chris Letang. He played for the Val-d'Or Fior in the QMJHL, probably butchered that name. Great there, leading to the Penguins drafting him in the 3rd round of the 05 entry draft. After more time in the minor leagues, though, he'd get the call up to the big show. And when there were some injuries piling up, a young Chris Letang would have to step up, and he did, leading the Penguins to the 2009 Stanley Cup, beating the Red Wings in 7 games. For the next few seasons, Letang would make the first 2 All-Star games of his career. However, in 2013, Chris Letang would suffer a stroke. Yeah, a young guy like that having a stroke. He'd miss 6 weeks and was actually cleared to come back to the ice. Like, what? He'd make another All-Star game in 2016 as the Penguins went on to win another Stanley Cup. Following season, he'd pick up an injury requiring neck surgery, and he'd miss the playoffs. But those Penguins were pretty good then. They'd win a back-to-back Stanley Cup, getting him another championship ring. He'd make another 3 All-Star games over his time in Pittsburgh, but even crazier than that, early 2022-23 season, Letang would suffer a 2nd stroke of his career. That's crazy for a hockey player to have 2 different strokes during your playing career. You're like, okay, he's done. Wrong. No, he's come back and he's still playing. He wound up winning the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy, an award given to the player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. I mean, coming back from a 2nd stroke, I guess that suffices. But like I said, Letang, he's playing with the Penguins currently, trying to help them get into the playoffs. He's represented Canada. His 2 World Junior gold medals. Heck of a player. Chris Letang, great defenseman. But we'll stick with hockey. The next 58 on the list, he plays for the Montreal Canadiens. David Savard, he played in the QMJHL and was drafted by the Blue Jackets in the 4th round, the 09 entry draft. He'd spend time in the minor leagues before getting the call up for the Blue Jackets. Doing great things in the minor leagues, though, winning CHL Defenseman of the Year. He'd have a great season with the Blue Jackets, and in the final year of his contract, he was traded to the Lightning, which really worked out for him as he was a big part of the Lightning team that won the 2021 Stanley Cup, over the Montreal Canadiens, and even had an assist on Ross Carlton's cup-clinching goal in Game 5 of the Cup Finals. After winning the Cup, Savard would leave in free agency to join the Montreal Canadiens, where he currently plays. The last 58 to get honored on this episode list is Oliver Kylington. The 26-year-old Swede got his start playing professionally in Sweden. He'd get selected in the second round of the 2015 entry draft by the Calgary Flames. Spent a lot of time playing with the Flames AHL affiliate, the Stockton Heat. In 2021-22, Kylington put up career highs in goals, assists, and points. But the following season, he'd have to go back to Sweden for a personal matter and didn't suit up for the Flames that season. He's been playing off and on for them this year. His numbers haven't been too great, but hopefully he can bounce back and get back to that career year he had. You're like, Ren City, where's the NBA players? Well, here's a fun fact. No one has wore the number 58 in NBA history. So if you're a young baller out there trying to make a name for yourself and have an untapped number, 58's available. So that's from the jerseys to the week of sports. And believe me, shit was going down all week. We had Champions League during the midweek. I hyped up these juicy matchups, these juicy quarterfinals in the last week's episode. Man, did they live up. You had Arsenal hosting Bayern Munich, two legendary clubs. Saka would get the ball in the box, finishing wonderfully, putting Arsenal up 12 minutes. But that lead would not last long. Bayern would go on the attack, and former gunner Serge Gnabry would equalize just 6 minutes after Arsenal scored. Leroy Sané would go on a run for the German side, getting taken down in the box, and who else would step up to take the penalty? Former Tottenham Hotspur, Harry Kane. You know they love him in Arsenal. He stepped up and scored against a club that hates the shit out of them, and Bayern would lead 2-1 after 32 minutes. Mikel Arteta, Arsenal manager, he had to do something, and his subs really paid off. Gabriel Jesus would set up Leandro Trossard, who would perfectly place his shot in the net, beating the keeper, tying the game up at 2, and that's how the game would end. Saka tried to get a penalty late, but the ref was like, get up. Wild match in North London that finished 2-2. And if you missed the beginning of the Real Madrid-Man City game, you were probably kicking yourself. Just moments into the match, Man City would get a free kick in a dangerous spot. Bernardo Silva would catch Madrid keeper Ludin off guard and sneak a perfect shot into the corner. And City was up just 2 minutes into the game. But it was not long for the home side to respond. A shot from way outside the box by Real Madrid was knocked into his own net by Ruben Diaz, a brutal own goal, just tying the game up after 12 minutes. And Man City looked for a quick response, but left themselves wide open in the back. And just 2 minutes after equalizing, Rodrigo would score on the counterattack, and suddenly Real Madrid were up 2-1. The second half, it was Man City's time to equalize. A wonder strike by Phil Foden found the top corner. A beautiful strike. You're like, how are you going to do that? And Gvardio's like, hold my beer. 5 minutes after Foden's goal, he'd unleash a booming shot. Top corner. It's like, what is happening? And just like that, Man City led 3-2 after 71 minutes. But again, it was short-lived. 8 minutes after Man City went ahead, Real Madrid would equalize. Federico Valverde, the ball would come to him. What a volley. Put it in the back of the net, 3-3. Wild-ass game at the Bernabeu. Craziness, I tell you. And like the following day, you're like, how are we going to follow that shit up? It was a tough act to follow, but they did their best. Titans, PSG, and Barcelona met up. A low cross by Barca would catch Donnarumma out of position, and Rafinha would score, putting Barca up before halftime. But not even 3 minutes into the second half, PSG would go on the attack, and former Barcelona player Ousmane Dembele would fire a rocket into the top corner, and he celebrated like a boss. I've talked about it on previous episodes. You know, people are usually chill against former teams. No chill there. To each their own, you know. I'm not going to tell people how to celebrate against a former team. But just minutes after tying the game up, Vitinha would finish off a nice build-up off the corner of the net. And just like that, PSG was up 2-1 after 50 minutes. But after the 62nd minute, Rafinha would time his run perfectly, get the pass, fire home his second of the match, and Barca was up again. And then just after coming on the field, 2 minutes after coming on, Andreas Christensen would jump up and head his goal in off a corner kick, putting Barcelona up for good. And they'd hold on to win 3-2. The last quarterfinal matchup was between Atletico Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. The Spanish side was hosting their German opponents, and the home side would instantly apply defensive pressure, which led to a terrible giveaway, and Rodrigo de Paul would score, giving Atletico 1-0 lead after just 4 minutes. Another Dortmund giveaway led to a beautiful pass by Antoine Griezmann. You got to see the highlight of that. Pinpoint, finding Samuel Lino, who finished wonderfully. And just like that, it was 2-0 Atletico after 32 minutes. It was just kind of amazing how Atletico couldn't get a third goal. They were peppering Dortmund keeper Kobel like a steak, but they just could not get another goal there. And that kind of bit him in the ass a bit as Dortmund would get one back. Second half substitute and former West Ham player Sebastian Haller would get the ball in the box and find the back of the net. Dortmund even had a chance to tie up the game in stoppage time, but Julian Brandt's header hit the crossbar. Big 2-1 win for Atletico Madrid. So, how do you follow that shit up? Well, you play the second legs of those fixtures this week. So this is Monday, as is this recording. If you're watching, get ready for the weeks upcoming. This team's matches will alternate from last week. So the teams that played on Tuesday, they'll play Wednesday this week and vice versa. So this Tuesday, Dortmund host Atletico Madrid down 2-1 on aggregate. Now, I know that Dortmund home atmosphere is one of the best in footy, but I think this Atletico Madrid is mentally tough enough. They don't get it unfazed. They already have that goal advantage. I'd see Atletico going on to the semis. The other Tuesday match features Barca and PSG, with Barcelona hosting the match, leading 3-2 on aggregate. And I'm expecting another goal-filled match where Barcelona would advance to the semifinals, sending Kylian Mbappe home in his last Champions League run with Paris Saint-Germain. The Wednesday matches are the cream of the crop, as Macho Man would say. The cream of the... I can't do it. But anyway, Bayern Munich are hosting Arsenal, and you're going to have two very angry clubs. I'll get into why those clubs are angry when I cover the domestic leagues in a little bit. But these two teams are hungry for this win. Being tied at 2 with that raucous crowd at Allianz Arena, it's going to be glorious, and it's a toss-up for me, but I'm going to go with Bayern Munich on this one. I see them advancing to the semifinals. Something dramatic late with former Tottenham man Harry Kane sticking it again to Arsenal. The last quarterfinal matchup prediction, Man City hosting Real Madrid, all tied up at 3-3 on aggregate, and I've said it before, this should be a final, not a quarterfinal. Two of the best teams in Europe going at it far too soon. One of them are going home. But anyway, another toss-up for me. I think Real Madrid's going to get the big win in England, with Englishman Jude Bellingham being a huge difference maker on his home soil. But hey, we got to go to the younger sibling of the Champions League, the Europa League. It had quarterfinal matches as well, and a few surprises as well. Italian side Atalanta went into Anfield and stunned Liverpool 3-0. 2 goals by another former West Ham striker, Samaka. He blew the game up, and Pasalic would add a third to really put Liverpool in a tough place, as they now trail 3-0 on aggregate. Another surprise was in the All-Italian matchup, where Roma would go into Milan and beat AC Milan with a 17th minute goal by Mancini. That was the only goal of the match, as Roma would take that one. Portuguese side Benfica hosted French club Marseille, and Benfica would get a first half goal by Rafa Silva and a second half goal by Angel Di Maria. But Marseille were able to get one back through Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and Benfica would take the 2-1 win, but at least Marseille were able to get one back before the second leg. Maybe I was a little ambitious in my hyping up West Ham before that Leverkusen match. Going in Germany to take on the unbeaten club, Leverkusen dominated West Ham, and despite that, it was scoreless getting into the later moments of the game. That was until Jonas Hoffmann would do the inevitable. Some chaos in the box. He'd find the back of the net. Leverkusen led in the 83rd minute. You're like, okay, let's not give up another one. But West Ham did. Victor Boniface would score in stoppage time. So Leverkusen take the 2-0 win. So these English clubs, they have a lot of work to do this week, which is, on Thursday of this week. They have a lot of work to do in the second leg of the quarterfinal fixtures. Liverpool has to go into Italy and come back from 3-0 down on aggregate to beat Atalanta. West Ham, they host Leverkusen, but they're down 2-0, and Leverkusen hasn't lost a match all year, so that could be a doozy. Milan doesn't have to go far to take on Roma, down 1-0 on aggregate, and that one could go either way. Marseille has Benfica come into their place down 2-1 on aggregate, so that one should be interesting. It's a tough task for Liverpool in their match, but I can see them doing. West Ham, I love them, I really do, and I hope they win, but I can't sit here and say I expect them to beat Leverkusen. I hope I'm wrong. I see Roma holding on to knock AC Milan out of this tournament, and I see Marseille coming back to beat Benfica in France with Aubameyang getting important goals because that's what he does in the Europa League. In the Premier League, we had all that amazing European head-to-head competition to set us up, and what a way to start! Newcastle hosting Tottenham, and they just beat the pants off them. Newcastle made Tottenham defender Van de Ven fall on his ass twice in quick succession. Isaac made him stumble on the opening goal, and then 95 seconds later, terrible giveaway led to Anthony Gordon dropping Van de Ven to the ground. He'd score, Newcastle would add 2 more goals in the second half, and they shut out Tottenham 4-0 in St. James Park. Man City looked to be riding high off that crazy Champions League game midweek, and their first goal was pretty fucking ridiculous. 65 seconds into the game, Erling Haaland went to volley the ball. I don't know where he was kicking, but it struck Luton Town's defender Hasioka right in the face, ricocheted into his own net. A brutal own goal that really probably hurt the face. Then it stayed that way for a long time, 1-0. And then the second half, Man City started putting the pressure on. Kovacic would unleash a beast of a shot, which was his first goal for Man City in the Premier League. Haaland would score on a penalty to put Man City up 3-0. And then Ross Barkley, showing he's still got it, lovely step over before burying a shot, which would have caused Pep to pull his hair out if he had any. But you know him. The goal differentials in the title race are very important. So Man City picked up on his anger and got some goals back. Doku, he's got some of the best footwork in the Premier League, and he would show it off before curling home a goal. Then Gavardio following up that midweek spectacular goal with another beauty. This time putting it top shelf again. This was the first Premier League goal for the Croatian, and what a week for him. Man City flexing on Luton Town, beating him 5-1. Nottingham Forest would host Wolves in an exciting game. Wolves would take the lead through Cunha, but former Wolves player Morgan Gibbs-White scored, and he celebrated a bit too, fucking against the old teams, right? In the second half, what looked like something out of a pinball had the ball come to Danilo, who put it away, and Forest led for the first time in the game, but it lasted all of 5 minutes when Cunha would get the second of the match for him, tying the game up and preserving the 2-2 draw. Brentford hosted Sheffield United and got their opening goal through a Sheffield United own goal by Arblaster. Arblaster really blasted it into his own net. Later in that match, Frank Onyeka would get the insurance goal for Brentford, and they beat a struggling Sheffield United 2-0. Burnley hosted Brighton in a game of blunders. Try saying that 5 times. No goals until the 74th minute. Some Burnley defensive pressure led to Brighton sending a back pass to the keeper, but it really lacked pace, prompting Brighton keeper Verbruggen to attempt to clear the ball, but his clearance hit Burnley captain John Brownhill, and it ricocheted into the net, giving Burnley the 1-0 lead, and giving Brownhill one of the easiest goals of his career. But Burnley was really hungry for this win, right? They're trying to get out of that relegation battle, but disaster would strike for Burnley. A back pass from Burnley was handled in the worst way by keeper Muric. As the ball was coming to him, he was already looking who to pass to, and the ball went right under his boot. A child would probably not make that mistake. It was disastrous. And the game would finish 1-1. And this comes a week after Muric would have a disastrous play leading to Burnley losing 1-0 to Everton. Back-to-back blunders for the Burnley keeper that are costing them points that could be the difference between them staying up or going down. I can't see Muric starting the next game. They'll bring anyone else in. You can't make those kind of decisions and expect to stay in the Premier League. Wow, tough go for them. But another game that would end in a draw went down in Bournemouth. They hosted Man U, and the home side would open the scoring. A badly timed slip by United defender Willy Kambwala led to Solanke scoring for Bournemouth. The 17th of the year for him in the Premier League, which sets a new Bournemouth single-season record. He's passed Joshua King's tally from 2016-17. Bruno Fernandes would equalize for Man U in the 39th minute, but Bournemouth would go ahead again just minutes later. Bad marking on the defensive end for Man U led to Justin Kluivert finding himself wide open, and he'd find the back of the net, giving Bournemouth the lead again. Then around the 1 hour mark, Man U's Mainu went to take a shot. The ball bounced off Bournemouth's arm in the box, giving United a penalty opportunity, where Fernandes would convert, getting the second of the game for him and tying the game up at 2. It looked like Bournemouth would get a penalty late, but VAR showed the foul occurred outside the box. It's a break for Man U there, and a very lackluster game for them. Liverpool hosted Crystal Palace after losing that top one at home earlier in the week to Atalanta. And early in the match, Crystal Palace would go on the attack, and a nice build-up led to Eze finding open space in the box, and he'd redirect the pass into the back of the net, giving Palace the 1-0 lead after 14 minutes. Liverpool would crank up the pressure from there, owning 70% of the ball throughout the match, but they just could not get that equalizer. And Crystal Palace would take the 1-0 win at Anfield. Back-to-back losses in 1 week in Anfield. A massive win for Palace, as it was their first win in 6 Premier League matches. But more importantly, to the top of the table, this loss may have ended Liverpool's chances of winning the Premier League. We'll see. There's still things that can happen in the year, but that's a tough blow. My West Ham would host Fulham. They're coming off that disappointing loss in Leverkusen earlier in the week, and things didn't start well for West Ham. Just 9 minutes into the match, Fulham would get the ball to Andreas Pereira in the box, and he'd score. Fulham led early, and the game stayed that way until the 72nd minute, where Fulham would dispossess Paqueta, go on the counter-attack, and Iwobi would find Pereira for the second of his match. And big 2-0 win for Fulham. A tough loss for West Ham there. So with Liverpool losing and Man City winning, Arsenal knew that they had to do something to stay in this title race, and that's to continue winning. They were coming off that tough match against Bayern Munich, and they were hosting a tough Aston Villa team. And to be fair, Aston Villa was on the forefront most of the match. They had 2 different occasions where they'd hit the Arsenal posts. And after the game remained scoreless entering the latter stages of the match, you're wondering if anyone would score. Villa would go on the attack, and they had a nice cross in the box, which was missed by everyone on the front post. But Leon Bailey, who was wide open on the back post, he still had a little work to do on a tight-angled shot, but he'd find the back of the net, giving Aston Villa the 1-0 lead after 84 minutes. You could sense the panic at the Emirates Stadium as Arsenal and their supporters were getting worried. They were pushing forward, all players forward. This left Arsenal open at the back, and a deep ball sent Ollie Watkins on his way. He wasn't offsides as they were still in their own half when the ball was sent, and he'd go on a breakaway, chipping the keeper wonderfully. 2-0 Aston Villa, 2 goals in 2 minutes and 26 seconds, stunning the Arsenal crowd, taking the 2-0 road win, and maybe even ruining Arsenal's title hopes. A nice gift from former Arsenal manager, current Villa manager, Unai Emery. He did not have the best spell in Arsenal, so this must have felt good for him. Chelsea would host Everton on Monday in the last game of the match week, and it got ugly for Everton quickly. Cole Palmer would score a hat-trick in just 29 minutes, curling a nice one in from outside the box for the first one. He'd get a rebound goal where he was the quickest to the ball for his second. And then for his third, Everton keeper Jordan Pickford basically passed him the ball. He had a distance to put that ball in, but he just looped it over right into the net. Just before halftime, Nicholas Jackson would get in on the party and make it 4-0 Chelsea going into halftime. Then around the one hour mark, Cole Palmer would get taken down in the box. And the biggest struggle of the day for Chelsea was who was going to take this penalty. Madueke wanted the ball. He was wrestling with Gallagher. Nicholas Jackson chimed in. But Cole Palmer is a regular taker. And even though he had a hat trick, he's like, I'm taking it. And he took it, and he does what he does. He scores from the spot, putting them up 5-0 in the match. And it looked to end that way with some late game subs coming in. But hey, well, how about one of the substitutes, 20-year-old Alfie Gilchrist? Just minutes on the field, he'd score his first Premier League goal, putting Chelsea ahead 6-0 as they just demolished Everton. So we look at the Premier League table. This past weekend's matches have really shaken things up in the standings. Man City sit atop the Premier League, all by their lonesome with 73 points. They have a 2-point lead over Arsenal and Liverpool, who are tied on 71, but Arsenal has the better goal differential. Aston Villa's big win over Arsenal combined with Tottenham's stinkfest have Villa sitting in the 4th spot with a 3-point advantage over Spurs, but Tottenham does have that game in hand though. And just as crazy as the top, we got to look at the bottom here at the relegation battle. Things not looking good for Sheffield United. Still in the basement of the Premier League with 16 points. Just above them is Burnley in 19th with 20 points. I mentioned how they've dropped some big points lately. Murrich. Luton Town have the last relegation spot in 18th with 25 points. And Everton and Nottingham Forest are not in the clear yet. Everton at 27 and Forest at 26th, just above the drop zone. We leave England, we go to Germany. The weekend fixtures of the German top division kicked off with Augsburg hosting Union Berlin. 2 second-half goals by Tietz and Sven Michel were enough to give Augsburg the big 2-0 win. Leipzig hosted Wolfsburg and looked the better team all match. Danny Olmo had perhaps the goal of the weekend when he'd get the ball, swivel, find the corner of the box all in one motion to put Leipzig ahead 1-0. The strike really caught the keeper off guard with how much pace was on it. In the second half, Benjamin Sesko and Louis Openda would add goals, giving Leipzig the big 3-0 win at home. Mainz hosted Hoffenheim in a game that had two drastically different halves. The 19th minute, the visitors would score off a lovely header by Katterbrecht to put the visitors ahead, but Mainz manager and super motivator Bo Henriksen must have said something at half, because his team came out swinging, looking like a whole different group. Minutes into the second half, Jonathan Burkhardt would head one into the net to tie the game at 1. Not even 4 minutes later, Mweni's shot would get deflected into the net. And Mainz went from 1 down at halftime to suddenly up 2-1 6 minutes into the second half. Mainz would get goals from Gruda on a Siwu, and they would take the match 4-1. A ridiculous comeback. Like I said, a tale of two halves. And what Bo Henriksen has done since being hired as the Mainz manager is amazing. They look destined for a relegation, but now the supporters have hope that they could be back in the Bundesliga next season. Mönchengladbach hosted Dortmund in a battle of teams with Borussia in their name, and out of nowhere we get an opening goal. A wonderfully timed run by Marcel Sabitzer would find himself open and he'd score. Minutes later, Dortmund would get taken down in the box and awarded a penalty where Sabitzer would step up again and get a second of his match. Mönchengladbach would get a goal back, and 8 minutes later when Maximilian Waber would score. And the second half would feature some weird events. It looked like Dortmund was awarded a penalty. Sabitzer took it and scored, and the ref said, "What are you doing? I didn't blow no whistle." So as they were looking at the call through VAR, where they determined it wasn't a penalty, all kinds of confusion started. And then Adeyemi would pick up his second yellow card, and Dortmund would have to play the last 35 minutes of the match a man down, but they still held on for the 2-1 victory. Bochum would host Heidenheim in a match that had all kinds of craziness and a little redemption. Heidenheim looked to go ahead just before halftime, but VAR found a handball and said no dice. Game remained scoreless at the break. In the second half, the home side looked to go ahead, but VAR got involved again, and they said there was a foul on the build-up. Again, no dice. The first goal of the game, which would actually count, was a disastrous one. Bochum defender Kevin Schlotterbeck, he went to clear the ball, and it just somehow got kicked into his own net. It looked like something out of a cartoon. A brutal own goal on a weekend that had own goals all over Europe. The redemption came in the 90th minute. Bochum had a corner kick, and Kevin Schlotterbeck would equalize, going from own goal to a goal for my team. 9-minute span. From zero to hero, as the commentator perfectly put it. A much-needed point for Bochum as they're battling to stay in the top division. Bayern Munich hosted Köln, and neither team could produce a goal in the first half. And things didn't look good in the second for Bayern. Kingsley Coleman picked up an injury and had to leave the match. But they'd get some good news in the 65th minute when Rafael Guerrero would curl his shot into the net. Then in stoppage time, while Köln was looking to equalize, Bayern would go down the field, and Thomas Mueller would finish, blowing a kiss to the crowd as they won 2-0. Stuttgart hosted Frankfurt and continued their great play. Guirassy would open the scoring for Stuttgart. His 25th on the Bundesliga season is a new single-season record for Stuttgart, surpassing German legend Mario Gomez. A bad defensive play by Frankfurt would lead to Dennis Undav doubling the home's team lead, and Janie Lewing would add a third for Stuttgart, and they'd cruise to a 3-0 win. Darmstadt hosted Freiburg, and in the 36th minute, Ritsu Doan would have a nice little 1-2 with Gregorich. When the Japanese midfielder got back, he'd curl it right into the corner, giving Freiburg the 1-0 lead, which is how the game would end. Another tough loss for Darmstadt as they're really struggling in the relegation battle. All eyes were on the last match of the weekend. The unbeatens, Bayer Leverkusen, were hosting Werder Bremen, the chance to clinch the Bundesliga title. The home side would get off to a dream start when they'd get taken down in the box and get rewarded a penalty. Victor Boniface would step up and deliver from the spot, giving Leverkusen a 1-0 lead just 25 minutes in. The game stayed that way until the 60th minute, where Werder Bremen were really not pressuring Leverkusen, and it backfired. Granit Xhaka would unleash a beauty from long distance and make it 2-0. 8 minutes later, Florian Wirtz would try his luck from outside and find the back of the net. He'd score again in the 83rd minute to make it 4-0, causing some fans to spill onto the pitch, a little premature celebration. But Wirtz gave the fans like a little fuck off wave, wait till the game's done, and he'd seal the game off with a nice kiss, getting his first hat trick of his career, giving Leverkusen the 5-0 lead, the 5-0 win, winning the Meisterschale, the first time in club history. Bayer Leverkusen are Bundesliga champions, ending Bayern Munich's 11-year reign as champions of Germany. Leverkusen have the longest unbeaten streak in Bundesliga history at 29 games with 25 wins and 4 draws. This also puts them at 43 games unbeaten across all competitions. What Xabi Alonso has done with this club is amazing. Isn't even a good enough word. What he's done is outrageous. It's amazing. Congrats to Bayer Leverkusen. That's why I wore the German international jersey. I don't have a Leverkusen jersey, but I wore the Germany Deutschland jersey. So we look at the Bundesliga table. Even though Leverkusen's won a title, no catching them. We know that. We look at the Champions League spots. There's lots to play for here. Bayern Munich and Stuttgart are tied at 63 points. Bayern having the better goal differential. Leipzig and Dortmund are tied on 56 points for that fourth and final Champions League spot. Leipzig hold the tiebreaker with a better goal differential, and this one's going to come right down to the race, right down to the last games of the season with, like I said, people want those Champions League spots. It's more money for the club. It's more exposure. You want the money. But we look at the bottom of the table where money's not so hot. Darmstadt would need an absolute miracle to survive the relegation battle. They only have 2 wins on the season and sit in last place, 8 points back to 17th place Cologne. Mainz sit in the 16th spot, which would have them play the third-seeded team in the lower division in that playoff. But Mainz have a 4-point gap over Cologne and are only 1 point back of 15th place Bochum. And the way Bone Henriksen's Mainz are playing right now, I'd be worried to play them if I was just above them in the standings. Just like those Champions League spots, this relegation battle could come down to the last game of the season. We're leaving Germany. We're going to Italy. Lazio hosted Salernitana to open the Serie A weekend. Another former West Ham man, Felipe Anderson, would open the scoring 7 minutes in, giving Lazio the early lead. His teammate Vecino would double the home team's lead just 7 minutes later. Loum Chetjonia would get one back for the visitors to make things interesting, but then the Brazilian Anderson would get his second of the game, second of the half, to put them up in the 35th minute. The 87th minute, Lazio would get a last-minute goal by Gustav Isaacson to give Lazio the big 4-1 win. A Lecce quick throw-in would get mishandled terribly by Empoli's defense. Lecce would pounce on the chance, and Sansoni would score the opening goal and the only goal in the 89th minute, and Lecce would pick up the big 1-0 home win. Torino held their own against Juventus in a home match, and this game really could have gone any way. No goals, nothing really, 0-0. Not the outcome Juventus was hoping for. Another scoreless draw. This one, Bologna dominated possession. 62% of the ball against Monza, but they could not find the net with their 7 shots on goal. Monza didn't even register a shot on net, so Bologna's going to be kicking themselves for not getting the win in that one. Defending Serie A champions Napoli were hosting Frosinone, and the home side would open the scoring with a beautiful goal from Politano. He'd curl it into the top corner from outside the box. That's a highlight right there. Frosinone was awarded a penalty but could not convert on the penalty chance. Minutes into the second half, Napoli keeper Alex Murray would have a dreadful giveaway in his own area, just literally giving it to Frosinone, and Khedira would score, tying the game up after 50 minutes. Napoli would regain the lead again when Victor Osimhen would finish nicely in the box. There were calls for offside, but he was good. Again, Frosinone would answer, and again it would be Khedira, and this time he'd use his head. Perfect header, finding him back in the net, tying the game up after 73 minutes. It looked like Frosinone might go on a breakaway, but Mario Rui pulled him down. Second yellow of the game, and they'd have to finish a man down. But what an exciting 2-2 draw. That game really could have went either way. Sassuolo hosted AC Milan, and you had 2 teams facing 2 different goals right now. AC Milan wanting to keep their very slim title hopes alive, while Sassuolo are looking to survive a relegation battle. The home side had a beautiful ending with Andrea Pinamori scoring, giving Sassuolo the lead just 4 minutes into the match. And just 6 minutes later, Armand Loriente would go on a run, and his first shot was stopped, but he'd rebound his own shot, hitting it in the back of the net. Milan was stunned. On the road, down 2-0, 10 minutes into the match. But around the 20-minute mark, Rafael Leao would show off his amazing footwork and beautiful shot. You got to look that up. What a run and footwork, and he'd find the back of the net, making it 2-1. But just 7 minutes into the second half, Loriente would get his second of the match for Sassuolo, and they'd go up 3-1. But this is where AC Milan would crank it to 11, and they'd put on the pressure. Leo's shot would get stopped, but Jovic was there knocking the easy rebound. 6 minutes after Sassuolo's goal, that was quick. And this made for a wild ending. Milan looked to equalize, but VAR found it offside by like an elbow. They showed the graphic, and you're like, what? But anyway, Milan kept up the pressure in the 84th minute. You know, they got their real goal. Okafor would put it in. Game ended 3-3. What a crazy game. Both teams would probably preferred the full 3 points, but a draw probably seems more fitting. The game between Udinese and Roma would get suspended. This was an interesting one. Initially, Udinese led when a bad Roma defensive play led to an Udinese goal. Roma would equalize when a lovely cross was met by Romelu Lukaku. Then, with roughly 20 minutes to go in the match, there was a very dramatic scene on the pitch. 24-year-old Ivorian Evan Ndinka, he would just sit down on the field and he'd lay down and he was rubbing his chest, like clutching his chest. The players were waving. Medical staff was called on. He was taken off the pitch into the locker room, and the Roma coach, Daniel De Rossi, went in the back to check on him. He looked emotional coming up. He talks amongst the teams, the opposing teams, the managers, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to abandon this right now. I'm not sure when they're going to replay it. But it was a scary scene. It was announced after the game, and Dinka is conscious and in good spirits, but any kind of heart issue like that, everyone thinks of the Christian Eriksen thing right away. But that was a really scary scene. I'm not sure what they're going to do with the last 20 minutes, plus stoppage time of that game. Title favorites Inter Milan hosted Cagliari, and Inter would get off to a great start when Marcus Thuram would knock a cross ball into the net, giving the home side the lead just 12 minutes in. And in the second half, Cagliari would get their answer. A long ball played downfield was laid off nicely to Shamorodov, who found the corner of the net and tied the game up at 1 after 64 minutes. And around 10 minutes after that equalizing goal, Inter would go on the attack, and they'd strike a Cagliari hand in the box, giving Inter the penalty where Hakan Calhanoglu would convert from the spot, putting Inter up 2-1 after 74 minutes. But this relegation-battling club did not give up. While on the attack, the ball would drop to Nicolas Viola, who would find the corner and tie the game up at 2, which is how it would end. Early in the game, in the match between Fiorentina and Genoa, Fiorentina would have a goal ruled out by VAR, and then just before halftime, Genoa would earn a penalty chance where Goodmanson would convert from the spot, giving Genoa the lead going into the break. But less than 10 minutes into the second half, Jonathan Akone would equalize, and that's how the game would end, 1-1. Genoa was awarded another penalty in the second half, but VAR said no dice. Atalanta were hosting Verona, feeling pretty good about their win over Liverpool in the Europa League during the week. That momentum carried into this match, it seemed like. A costly turnover by the visitors led to Samaka unleashing a rocket that found in the back of the net, and Atalanta led 1-0 after 13 minutes. Verona was looking to respond, but left themselves open in the back, and 5 minutes after their first goal, Atalanta got a second. A nice pass sent Ederson one-on-one, and he easily beat the keeper, and it was 2-0 after 18 minutes. It's tale of two halves, though. 11 minutes into the second half, we get the third goal in the match, and this was a counter-attack leading to Darko Lazovic finding the corner, cutting the lead in half. And then not even 4 minutes later, the man who set up the goal, Noslin, would meet a cross and find the back of the net, and suddenly in a span of minutes we went from 2-0 to 2-2, which is how the game would end. Disappointment for Atalanta, who seemed to take their foot off the gas for just those 2 minutes, and that ended up costing them 2 points. So we look at the Serie A table. Inter Milan almost have the championship wrapped up. Inter Milan have a 14-point lead over second place AC Milan. So when they meet next Monday, Inter Milan could clinch the Serie A in the Milan derby, a feat that's never been done before. So we could see some history there. AC Milan will not want to lose that one. So AC Milan technically has a chance, but I don't see Inter collapsing in the last 6 games of the season. Juventus is 6 points behind AC Milan in third place, and Bologna still in fourth place, 4 points ahead of Juventus. And Roma just sit 4 points behind Bologna for that last Champions League spot, and they have a game in hand. And we look at the bottom of the table. Salernitana are stuck in the basement of the Serie A with just 15 points. Sassuolo in 19th with 26 points, and Frosinone just above them with 27 in the 18th spot. 13th to 18th is only separated by 5 points. So Lecce, Cagliari, Udinese, Verona, Empoli, you're all in the danger zone right now. You do not want to fall in the relegation zone. No one's safe right now there. We'll go to Spain, where Real Betis would host Celta Vigo. No goals in the first half, but we get a few in the second. In the 53rd, some wonderful passing by Real Betis led to Juan Miranda scoring, putting the home side up 1-0. The 83rd minute, Nabil Fekir would get put on a nice move and slam his ball into the net, making it 2-0 Real Betis. Jorgen Strand Larsen would get one back for Celta Vigo, but it was too little too late. 2-1 win for Real Betis. Atletico Madrid was hosting Girona in a match that featured two teams looking to play European footy next season. Girona would get off to a perfect start when Dovbyk would get the finish in the box, putting the visitors up 1-0 just 4 minutes into the match. Atletico would look to respond, and a nice free kick in the box was headed on right into the hand of a Girona defender, giving a penalty to Atletico where Griezmann would step up and score from the spot, tying it at 1 after 34 minutes. Just before the halftime whistle, the ball was looking to go out the end line in the Girona area. And first half substitute, Alvaro Morata kept the ball in, did a little dance, crossed it in to Angel Correa, who'd head the ball into the net, putting Atletico up 2-1 with like the last touch of the first half. Then 5 minutes into the second half, Atletico would put the game out of reach. The ball would come to Griezmann in the box, and when that happens, it's usually a goal. 3-1 home win for Atletico that could make a big difference in this chase for Champions League spots. Rayo Vallecano hosted Getafe, and to be fair, there was not a lot of action. Vallecano had more of the ball, but neither team got too many shots, and this was a 0-0 snooze fest. Mallorca hosted Real Madrid in a big matchup. Mallorca were coming off that loss in the Copa del Rey final last weekend. Real Madrid are trying to inch closer to that La Liga title. There'd be no goals in the first half, but the first goal of the game was a stunner. Chuchemeni would unleash a beast of a shot from downtown, they'd say in NBA Street or NBA Jam, and he'd put it in the opposite top corner, a beauty shot, and that'd be the only shot of the night. Real Madrid take the 1-0 win, winning on the road. Barcelona would also go on the road to take on Cadiz, and in the opening moments of that match, both teams had chances to score. Barcelona would get a corner kick, and off that kick, we'd see a lovely over-the-head kick by João Felix. Cadiz players wanted a foul, no foul given, goal counted. 1-0 after 37 minutes, and that'd be the only goal. Barcelona squeaking out the win on the road. Las Palmas welcomes Sevilla for a Sunday matchup. A nice sunny day got cloudy real quick for the home side. Sevilla looked to go up on a breakaway, but Las Palmas defender Sal Coco pulled him down. Initially, a yellow was given, but VAR upgraded that shit to red, putting Las Palmas a man down after just 6 minutes, which totally changed the game. Sevilla had so many chances to score, and it wasn't until just before halftime where they'd finally get the opening goal. Yusuf and Nessieri, he'd head the ball into the net, putting them up. Las Palmas was really pushing in the second half. I got to give them credit. They were applying pressure despite being a man down, but that left them open really late in stoppage time. Luke Baeko would put the nail in the coffin. Sevilla take the 2-0 win. Good on Sevilla there. Granada hosted Alaves, knowing they need to get something going to try to stay alive in this relegation battle. And an Alaves foul in the box led to a Granada penalty chance. Azuni would power one home from the spot, and the home side led 1-0 after 9 minutes. Granada would get a free kick in a dangerous spot, and off the dead ball, it would get crossed again, where Lucas Boye would find the back of the net. Granada up 2-0 after 38 minutes, and they'd hold on for that win. A massive win. You could see how much it meant to the home crowd. And there was a nice presentation before the match with Athletic Bilbao. They secured the Copa del Rey trophy last weekend in that win over Mallorca. This game did not start well for them, though. 10 minutes into the match, a Villarreal player screamed bloody murder for the softest touch on his foot. VAR said, you know what, that soft touch is a penalty. But the footy gods maybe stepped up, and Gerald Marino would hit the post, keeping the game goalless. There'd be no goals in the first half, but we'd have some drama moments in the second. Comesaña would pick up his second yellow card just a minute into the second half, and Villarreal would go down to 10 men. This sparked the home side as they increased the pressure. Sunset would have the ball come to him in the box, and he'd find the back of the net, giving Bilbao the 1-0 lead after 66 minutes. They looked poised to secure the win, but there'd be a penalty given in stoppage time. Bilbao defender Berchiche would slide, make a wonderful block, but the ball kind of rolled up his leg, off his chest, hitting his arm. Nothing to do with anything else. It wasn't a goal stopping opportunity of any kind. Very accidental, but the officials gave no fucks. They looked at VAR and said, you know what? Penalty. This time, Danny Perio would step up and he'd find the top corner, tying the game at 1 in the 95th minute. 1-1 draw in a game full of drama. Real Sociedad hosted bottom of the table Almeria, feeling pretty confident, but they were humbled early when Adrian Barba would go on a breakaway and beat the keeper, putting the visitors up 1-0 after a half hour, silencing the home crowd. But that home crowd would get woken up again real quick. 90 seconds after going down, Geraldo Becker would deflect a cross into the back of the net, tying the match at 1. The second half, Real Sociedad would score again, but VAR would disallow it. But moments later, Yazbal would score off an assist from Becker, and this one would count, putting the home side up 2-1 after 59 minutes. Just before the 90-minute mark, Almeria would go on the attack and get taken down in the box. Igor Zubeldia pulled the Almeria player down and was given a straight red card. This put Sociedad a man down, but more importantly, gave Almeria a penalty chance, where Barbo would step up and score his second of the match, securing the 2-2 draw and saving a point for a team that has not got a lot of points this season. The last game of the Spanish weekend had Valencia on the road to take on Osasuna. Sevilla would find Andre Almeida. He'd find the corner of the goal, putting the visitors ahead 1-0 in the 18th minute. And that was the only goal of the match as Valencia pick up the 1-0 win. So after a crazy weekend in Spain, we're looking at the table. Real Madrid have an 8-point cushion atop the league. Barcelona sit in second place, 5 points ahead of third place Girona. I mentioned that magnitude of the Atletico Madrid-Girona match, and now Atletico Madrid sit just 4 points behind Girona in the fourth position. But don't count out Athletic Bilbao. They're just 4 points behind Atletico for that last Champions League spot. The bottom of the table, the point was big for 20th place Almeria. They just have 14 on the season. Just above them in 19th is Granada with 17 points. So that win was massive for them, as I alluded to earlier. The last relegation spot is held by Cadiz in 18th with 25 points. Celta Vigo just 3 points above the drop zone. And Rayo Vallecano and Mallorca 6 points above the relegation spot. So every game big going forward. We wrap up the Euro play in Ligue 1 here. Mets were hoping for a good result when they hosted Lens, and they did not get out to a good start. Mets keeper Wakajija took out an attacking Lens player in the box, leading to a penalty, where Satoka would step up and bury the penalty, giving the visitors a 1-0 lead after 13 minutes. But in the 34th minute, Georgian striker George Mikatse would make a lovely move before finding him back of the net, tying the game at 1. And in first half stoppage time, Lens would give up the ball in the area, and they did not want to give it to this Mets player, Mikatadze, who would clinically finish his second of the match, putting them up 2-1 going into the break. Lens would crank up the pressure, finishing with 71% of the ball, but, that doesn't always equate to goals, and Mets picked up the big 2-1 victory. A nice cross into the box was headed right into the corner by Nakamura, giving Reims the opening goal, 1-0. 7 minutes into that match. And just before halftime, Strasbourg would get a penalty where Gamero would bury it, tying the game at 1. And then real deep in the first half stoppage time, Kone would pick up his second yellow card, and Reims would be down to 10 men to play the entire second half. Strasbourg took advantage 5 minutes in the second half. Free kick bounced in the box where Akbar Silla met it with his head, making it 2-1. And then a terrible back pass by Reims in stoppage time led to an interception where Sahi would put the game away, making it 3-1 Strasbourg as they pick up the big home win. Rennes got off to a lovely start with Desiree Doué showing off some footwork and pace, finishing with a perfectly placed shot, putting Rennes up 1-0 after 20 minutes over Toulouse, but not even 2 minutes later, Toulouse would tie it up. going on the immediate attack. Caceres would bury his shot from outside the box. And then 10 minutes after the equalizer, Toulouse would take the lead through Diarra, finding the corner to make it 2-1, and that's how the game would end. Big comeback win for Toulouse, where everything took place in the first half, really. This game looked destined for a scoreless draw, with Lens taking on... Who were they taking on there? And Bamba would get a very impressive run, capping it off with shot to the corner, as Lens picked up the very big win. And despite being under pressure for most of the first half, Claremont Foot would go on the attack and get taken down in the box, leading to a penalty where Mohamed Cham would step up and bury it. Very soft goal there, but in all honesty, it probably should have been stopped by the keeper, this penalty. He guessed right, and it went right under his arms, so... Shaw probably should have stopped it. But 11 minutes into the second half, a low cross got through the Claremont Foot defenders, coming right to Koulibaly, and the Montpellier winger would score, tying the game at 1, which is how it would end. But the best match was the last match in the league. Lyon hosting Brest. And like I said, you could have saved the best for last. Tolisso would open the scoring for Lyon after just 18 minutes, and the game stayed scoreless. 3 minutes later, Lyon would have a corner kick, a short corner, would have the ball come to Alexander Lacazette, where he'd smash the ball into the net. Brest would lead 3-2. And then not even 9 minutes later, Tagliafico, he'd tie the game up with a low shot, putting it into the corner, and the game would be all tied up. And as the game got really late, Brest looked to score from long range, where Lise Malou would try a long shot. He'd lay on the ground a bit, and Tagliafico did not like that. The Argentinian went to pick him up, and it caused a little scuffle, a footy scuffle, where nothing really got out of control, but they both get second yellow cards and have to get dismissed from the match. The last few minutes of the match would be played 10-on-10. Deep in the stoppage time, Brest's keeper would collide with a player. It was pretty brutal. Didn't need to happen, but a penalty was given where Englishman and former Arsenal player Ainsley Maitland-Niles would convert from the spot, scoring the game winner in the 16th minute of stoppage time. Big win for Lyon there. What a match. So with those matches played, we can look at the league on table. PSG have a 10-point cushion atop the table. Brest sit in second place with 53 points. They played one more game than the teams around them in the table. Monaco 1 point back of Brest in third. Lille sit 3 back of Monaco in fourth. Bottom of the table is a lot wilder. Clermont Foot in the basement. And they have 22 points. Metz and Lorient equal on points, with Lorient have the better goal difference. So Metz currently sit in the guaranteed relegation spot, while Lorient still in the relegation playoff spot. Le Havre just 2 points clear of the spots, and Nantes just 5 points clear. So a few teams are in the danger zone there. Quick look at the English pyramid here, all this relegation promotion talk. There's all kinds of shit going on. Just below the Premiership, the Championship, one heck of a race for promotion. Ipswich Town sit atop the league with a 1 point lead over second place Leicester City, 2 point lead over third place Leeds United. Top two teams in that league get automatic promotion to the Premier League, while a playoff is held with teams third to sixth. So the top two spots, very crucial. It's exciting to see who will earn promotion in the Premier League, and also to see who's getting relegated. Depending who you support, I guess. Rotherham are already locked in to get relegated to League One next season, leaving 2 more spots for teams to fall. 16th to 23rd, only separated by 6 points, so 8 teams in jeopardy. EFL League One play, just below the Championship. League One, slightly different rules. Promotion rules similar. Top 2 teams earning promotion, with 3rd and 6th having a playoff to determine who gains it. But at the bottom of the league, the bottom 4 clubs get relegated. So looking at the table, Portsmouth still have a lead and are poised to earn promotion, but nothing's guaranteed. Derby County and Bolton also looking for that guaranteed promotion. The bottom of the table, Carlisle have already confirmed their relegation to League 2, and there's still a tight race above them as 3 relegation spots have not been confirmed. Fleetwood Town, who are currently the longest tenured League 1 team, are in jeopardy of getting relegated to League 2. League 2 similar to the tiers above them, but also a little different. In League 2, the top 3 teams are in automatic promotion, while spots 4 till 7 compete in a playoff to seek that 4th spot. The bottom two clubs of League Two get relegated to the National League, which is a nice segue to former National League club Wrexham. The club owned by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. The team earned promotion from the National League last season, and they have since clinched promotion to League One after their win on the weekend. Stockport and Wrexham already clinched their spots, with Stockport poised to win the league. Mansfield Town just need 1 point in their last 3 games to earn promotion to League One for the first time since 2002, leaving that fourth spot open to the winner of the 4-game playoffs. So much on the line. The difference between a promotion and a higher tier, staying in the same league, to relegation. It's what makes these all so wild. Right now, Forest Green and Sutton United are in danger of dropping into the National League. That was a lot of footy talk, I'll say. So we'll mention NCAA women's basketball. I know our tournaments are done, but legendary Stanford women's basketball coach Tara Vanderveer announced her retirement from coaching. It said she stay with the university in an advisory role, but she's giving up her position to longtime assistant Kate Pay, who, like I said, she's been on the staff a long time. It sounds like they're going with her going forward. Vanderveer's official retirement is May 8th, which will mark exactly 39 years since she was hired as a Stanford coach. Vanderveer played college ball at Albany before transferring to Indiana, where she would watch practices ran by Indiana's men's coach, Bobby Knight. After her playing days, she'd go right into coaching at Ohio State and as assistant before getting a head coaching gig at Idaho. After a few seasons there, she was hired back to Ohio State, and from there she moved to Stanford, where, like I said, she'd coach almost 40 years, taking a brief break to coach the USA Women's Olympic basketball team, a team that went unbeaten on an insane tour, playing teams from all around the world. It's highlighted perfectly in the 30 for 30 Dream On, a 3-part series that highlights what that team did and their impact on the women's game. That group needed a strong coach, and Tara Vanderveer filled in perfectly. The world of basketball sees a legend retire. She won 3 national NCAA tournaments, 13 Final Fours, and 27 regular season Pac-12 titles, along with 15 Pac-12 tournament titles. It's almost fitting that she retires as the Pac-12 collapses, but Vanderveer is also the most winning collegiate basketball coach in history, men's or women's. Her 1,216 wins have her above everyone. However, that mark will probably get broken next season by legendary UConn head coach Gino Auriemma. He trails her by just 3 games, but regardless, you got to put some respect on Tara Vanderveer's name when we talk about some of the best coaches ever in basketball history. But we'll stick with women's college hoops. Iowa announced Caitlin Clark's number 22 for the Hawkeyes will be retired. Lots of good times for Caitlin Clark as she made an appearance on Saturday Night Live, which is a perfect segue to the WNBA Draft, where it's going down today as I'm recording. I'll be catching up after this. So I didn't get to record this before work. I'm doing it now. We'll catch up on this after. Excited to see this draft. So given Caitlin Clark's going number 1, she's going to be part of a hell of a 1-2 punch with number 1 overall pick last year, Aaliyah Boston, who made the All-Star game and won Rookie of the Year. That 1-2 punch could become one of the best in the league. But this is a damn good draft, especially those first few picks. Stanford's Cameron Brink, Texas, Rakia Jackson, Final Four MOP of the title-winning South Carolina team, Camila Cardoso. Everyone's saying Cameron Brink's ahead of her, but I don't know. I think I might go with Cardoso, but some mock drafts are saying there's a chance the Sparks could get both of them. I think that's pretty wild, but we'll see. JC Sheldon from Ohio State had her stock rise throughout the season. Canadian Aaliyah Edwards would be a great addition to any team. And let's not forget about one of the most popular players in the game, Angel Reese. She has to be one of the most polarized athletes out there. She gets hate, but she does. She's a little cocky, but she backs it up. She's good. She's a damn good player that could help any team that drafts her. One of my favorite players to watch all year of the Pac-12 was Utah's Alyssa Pili. She can do it all. She can do it all on the floor. Her vision, her shooting, her passing. She'll be a steal in this draft, but I'm excited for all these people. Can we just cheer up Caitlin Clark rather than saying she isn't shit and shouldn't get the coverage she's getting? She's doing elite things to elevate the game. Granted, there should be more talked about what South Carolina has done this season, winning the NCAA tournament after going undefeated all season. I mentioned my previous podcast, and it's only been done 9 times before they did it. So the main thing is the game's growing, more eyes on the game. Let's talk about the game growing. Let's talk about Caitlin Clark raising people, collectively raising people. Amazing basketball going on. If someone's unaware, let's not trash them. Let's educate them and get them out. If you show it, people will watch. It's been happening, and this group of players coming into the WNBA is going to be amazing. The first major of the golf season concluded over the weekend. Scottie Scheffler won the Masters for the second time in his career, as predicted by yours truly on last week's episode. I wish I listened to my own advice and bet on that. I would have. Anyway, Scheffler's second Master win in 3 years, the 9th career tournament win for Scheffler, and the 3rd win already this season. He's the number 1 ranked golfer in the world for a reason. His 4-under final round was enough to clinch his second green jacket with minus 11. But Ludwig Eberg finished runner-up, 4 strokes behind the winner. And this was his Masters debut. A lot of people are looking forward to seeing what the 24-year-old Swede can do the rest of the season. A lot of potential there. Max Homa and Colin Morikawa finished 3rd, 7 strokes behind the winner. And it was an entertaining tournament for sure. Always nice to see the beautiful course in Augusta. Controversial golfer Bryson DeChambeau had an up-and-down tournament. He had a few moments making you scratch your head. He had to get his irons approved first because they were 3D printed a special way. But so you got to give him credit for always trying to get an advantage. Like when he was seen carrying the big sign around the course at the Masters. The sign was in his way, but Rule 15.2 states, remove a movable obstruction anywhere on or off the course and may do so in any way. The debated part about that rule is the movable obstruction part. Some things may be deemed movable based on the person. It really is up to your interpretation of the rule. DeChambeau is a big guy and can move the sign, prompting Jim Nantz to quip, is this Paul Bunyan or Bryson DeChambeau? DeChambeau would wind up finishing tied in 6th place, 9 strokes behind Scheffler, and overall a very successful tournament where we'll continue to see the reign of Scottie Scheffler. It was nice he could finish the round, too. It was reported that if his wife went into labor during the round, he'd withdraw to be at the birth of his firstborn son. I mean, you can't blame him for that. After the win, he emotionally thanked his wife and said he's on his way home to be with his very pregnant wife. This dude's just winning at life right now. So another big announcement at the Masters. It was the last time we'd hear legendary voice Vern Lundquist. The iconic CBS broadcaster called his 40th and final Masters on Sunday. The 83-year-old has been behind many monumental moments in Masters history. And there was a moment where he shook hands with Tiger Woods where he's kind of hidden behind a tree. You've probably seen the meme already. And it was cool to see Tiger out there playing all 4 rounds, making the cut. Like, you can tell physically he's struggling, but it's just good to see him alive and playing golf again. So the next major will be the PGA Championship, which will be played the May-long weekend. And with all this going on, there was still UFC 300. I missed the early prelims, but I did catch highlights where I saw the before and after of Jim Miller's face, where he looked like he was an extra in the scene in the movie Carrie. Blood everywhere. Following that loss to Bobby Green. The prelims started off with a bang. Up-and-coming featherweight Diego Lopez knocked out Sadiq Youssef in the first round. Holly Holm would get submitted by Kayla Harrison in the second round. I know you're not supposed to judge a fighter before the fight, but looking at Harrison, I'm like, man, she's going to whoop Holly Holm's ass, and she kind of did. Anjamin Sterling used a power bomb, pile driver, like hybrid move to get the win over Calvin Kattar. That went to decision. Yuri Prochazka looked like he was in trouble against Alexander Rakic, and he connected on a few good blows that had Rakic stumbling. Yuri would eventually get Rakic to the ground and batter him until the ref called the match, getting some of that extra incentive money for a second-rounded stoppage. Those crazy bouts led to the main card. Undefeated Bo Nickel remained undefeated, where he submit Cody Brundage in the second round with a rear naked choke. Nickel moves to 6-0 in UFC, and he had harsh criticism, mostly on himself after the fight, saying he could have and should have done better. But hey, a win's a win. Charles Olivier and Armin Tarsakian, not Tanzarian. I kept calling him Armin Tanzarian from The Simpsons, if you know Skinner. But anyway, a great match that went the distance. At one point, Oliveira felt he had the fight locked up, tongue hanging out. Fight went to decision, and Saryukin did enough to secure the win. Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje. You probably heard about this. Fight of the night. It was a brawl fest. It looked like Gaethje had his nose broken at some point. The fact he was still staying in there and getting punched in it, oh, God, I couldn't imagine. Then the dying seconds of the fight, it turned super slugfest. Holloway caught Gaethje, knocking him out with 1 second left in the fight. A buzzer beater, brain rattler, knocking Gaethje out bad. It looked like his face hit his knee on the way down. And I mentioned that nose of his. It was wild. We were losing this shit. Everybody was losing their shit. Holloway secured not only the last second win, He brought home an extra 600 grand. Dana won up the fight money for fight of the night from 50,000 to 300 for the big UFC event. Holloway was awarded fight of the night, performer of the night, and he won the BMF belt, and that's bad motherfucker belt for you that don't know at home. The next match was another title match, two Chinese superstars. Zhang took on Yan, and it was a violent bout. At one point, she looked actually choked out, like she was woken by the bell, saved by the bell. Like, it was crazy. She looked like she was unconscious. I mean, you can't tap if you're out cold, I guess. But yeah, it was crazy. The fight would go the distance. Weili Zhang would retain her straw white title. The other main event between Alex Pereira and Jamala Hill. This fight, like many others in the evening, had a crazy ending. An early ending where Pereira was hitting the dick, kinda, and the ref Herb Dean wanted to stop. Pereira was like, get out of here. And then he proceeded to hit Hill with a left hook, dropping him a few hammer fists later, and he's like, eh. Fight was over. Crazy win. Dana White can be nothing but happy of how that UFC 300 event went down in Vegas. Crazy. To a game that includes fighting, the NHL. There are only a few nights left in the NHL with the season concluding April 18th, so lots to be decided in the standings. Off the ice, it sounds like the Coyotes are on the run. The players and the staff members were alerted that the team will be relocating from Arizona to Utah. What a move. I wonder if they'll stay Coyotes or Mormon Coyotes. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But we'll start in the West here as the season winds down. We know our playoff teams. In the Central, the Stars have clinched the division. The Jets and Avalanche are going in the playoffs in the division. In the Pacific, the Canucks lead, but they could still technically be catched by the Oilers for the division crown. The Kings are in the other Pacific spot, but they could be caught by the Golden Knights. Right now, the Predators have a wild card spot clinched. It's just unsure where the Kings and Knights will sit right now. We go to the East where things are a little more interesting. The division titles aren't even wrapped up yet. The Bruins lead the Atlantic Division with a 1-point lead over the Panthers. The Leafs a few points behind them. All three of those teams going to the postseason. In the Metropolitan Division, the Rangers are leading with the Hurricanes still able to catch them. And Tampa Bay has clinched a wild card spot. But that last spot in the Metropolitan still up for grabs. The Islanders have it right now, but they can be caught by the Capitals, Flyers, or Penguins. And those teams are still vying for a wild card spot too. The Capitals currently hold that spot. But like I said, this is the last week of the NHL, and by next episode, we should have our bracket, and Ren City will be making some Stanley Cup choices here. But we'll look at the points leaders going to this last group of games. Familiar faces at the top of the list. As of recording, Tampa Bay's Nikita Kucherov leading the league with 141 points. Behind him, second place, Nathan MacKinnon of Colorado with 138. Only player close to them is Edmonton's Connor McDavid with 130. Six other players to break the 100-point plateau. Rangers' Artemi Panarin, Boston's David Pastrnak, Toronto's Austin Matthews, Oilers' Leon Draisaitl, Colorado's Mikko Rantanen, and Vancouver's JT Miller. We already know who's going to take the Rocket Richard Trophy, Austin Matthews. The only question is this guy going to hit 70 or not? They have 2 games left in the season. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to get to 70 before the end of the season. Behind Matthews on the goal list, just a few guys to crack the half-century mark. Second spot, Florida's Sam Reinhart. 55 goals. Zach Hyman of Edmonton with 53. Colorado's Nathan MacKinnon in the 50 club with 51. A few other guys have a shot at 50 goals, so we'll see if anyone joins those 4 dudes at the half-century mark. Goaltenders, I'm looking at guys who have played at least 50 games. Save percentage leader then is Winnipeg's Connor Hellebuck. Goals against average, you got Florida's Sergei Bobrovsky on the case. 3-way tie for shutout leaders, Arizona Connor Ingram, Pittsburgh's Tristan Jarry, and Florida's Bobrovsky leading the league with 6 shutouts each. For rookie scoring, look no further than number 1 overall pick, Connor Bedard, missing time with a fractured jaw earlier in the season. He still leads rookies in points and goals. 60 points have him 13 ahead of second place Luke Hughes of Jersey, who's been out for the year for a bit here. Bedard's 22 goals has him 1 ahead of Minnesota's Marco Rossi. So Despite not a lot of wins, pretty good career, but pretty good inaugural season for Connor Bedard. Quick mention of the Frozen Four. We're talking hockey. The conclusion of the NCAA hockey tournament, the Frozen Four. This year, he had the University of Denver beating Boston University 2-1 in overtime to get to the championship game. The other semifinal, Boston College shut out Michigan to win 4-0, setting up a juicy championship game between Denver and Boston College, the two top scoring teams in the nation. However, it would be a goaltender that would steal the show. University of Denver goalie Matt Davis came up big in the biggest game, helping the Pioneers beat the Boston College Eagles 2-0. This was the 10th NCAA Men's Hockey National Championship for the program, the first program to reach double digits in title wins. Former Philadelphia Flyer and Hobey Baker finalist Cutter Gauthier was on the losing end with Boston College. Just after the game, he'd sign a 3-year entry-level contract with the Anaheim Ducks. I mentioned Gauthier was the final for the Hobey Baker Award. That's the award given to the best college player of the year in hockey. This year it went to Boston University's Macklin Celebrini. Baseball, this episode's getting a little long here, so I'll make a quick shout out in baseball. Toronto Blue Jays played some home games for once, winning 2 out of 3 against the Mariners. They'd then win 2 out of 3 against the Rockies, so not a bad week for them at home. The Jays host the New York Yankees in a 3-game series before heading out west to take on the Padres, hoping the Jays can continue this better ball to try to get out of the basement of the AL East. The game with the Yankees is probably on right now or even coming to an end, so like I said, I record this a little later, so hopefully that game goes well. Other baseball news, number 1 rated prospect Jackson Holliday, son of great baseball player Matt Holliday, got the call up for the Orioles and was given permission from Cal Ripken Sr.'s family to wear the number 7. No one's worn that 7 in Baltimore since Ripken Sr. passed away. Took 14 at-bats for Holliday to get his first hit, but there's going to be plenty more where that come from. I'm excited to see him throughout the season, except when he's playing the Jays. Hopefully he slumps then. So a quick recap of the MLB standings, starting in the American League. The Yankees leading the AL East, while the Jays are still in the basement at 500. It's a damn tough division, we know that. Cleveland Guardians have a narrow lead over the Royals in the Central. The AL West has only one team above 500, the Texas Rangers leading the division. All the other clubs are hanging around that 500 mark. The National League, the Dodgers are leading the NL West. The NL Central is looking tough with the Brewers still leading the surprising Pittsburgh Pirates. The NL East is very competitive near the top with the Braves having a slight lead atop the division despite all the injuries they're having, especially on the mound. I know the NFL is miles away with the draft coming sooner than you think, but huge news in the NFL world and the entertainment world. The death of former NFL running back Orenthal James Simpson, OJ, the Juice. Talked about him episode 32. He passed away at the age of 76 in a battle with cancer. After his passing, you could see how polarized he was, depending on the different responses you'd see. But wow, a very interesting life who gave us lots to talk about, that's for sure. Depending who you talk to, I guess. The Jaguars are re-signing linebacker Josh Allen on a 5-year, $150 million deal. I was also surprised to hear San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk requesting a trade from the team. I did not see that coming. This comes soon after Stephon Diggs was moved to the Houston Texans from Buffalo. And I forgot this in the basketball portion. I know I have an NBA podcast, but this is college hoops, not NFL related. I don't know why it's in this section. But Kentucky, they hired a new head coach after John Calipari has left. Former BYU coach Mark Pope will be the new head coach of the men's basketball team at Kentucky. So congrats to him. Some big shoes to fill. Long episode here, 58. Keeping it on trucking. It's been a fun one, lengthy and fun. Names not usually associated with myself, but that's for another story. The WNBA Draft going on as I record this. I can't wait to see who's been picked where. I had to think of a time involving a woman basketball player, and this time it's my wife, Caitlin. We went to the YMCA because I wanted to get some jumpers up. She was coming along to join and have some fun. This was pre-Ren City ACL reconstruction surgery, so we were out there shooting. I was feeling it. Everything was going in. I'm like, man, I'm on fire right now. I'm feeling it. Then I heard Caitlin make a noise, and I was like, what's up? And she said she hurt her finger pretty bad. And I was like, oh, it's a finger jam, no biggie. I'm just kind of shooting around. And like you could see, it was very bothering her, very much so. She went to the bathroom and cleaned up blood, and I was like, whoa, blood? That's not right. And then I was like, it's just a bad finger jam. I'm feeling it. And then she's like, well, I should probably get it looked at. I'm like, okay. Thinking about it now, I am kind of sounding like an asshole here, but I mean, I was feeling it, and I don't usually shoot that well. But anyway, we went home, got the health card, because we're in Canada, whoop, whoop, and went to City Hospital, getting in pretty quick. This was before the hospital ER was out of control like it is now. But yeah, sent for x-rays and wait for the doctor to get back. And when she saw the x-rays, she made me look, and there, sure as shit, an avulsion fracture where the bone breaks, pulls the ligament back, giving you a crooked finger. The doctor said it's an injury most associated with linemen in football, where they get their fingers caught in the face mask and leave them all crooked. So hearing the doctor say that definitely killed my, oh, it's just a finger jam argument. Did not go well. We had to get her brace picked out. And when she had to put that on, the scream she let out, because, it was pretty fucked. I straight up thought it was a paper jam. Or a paper jam. My brain isn't working like a paper jam because I thought it was a finger jam. And I was so wrong. And you better believe that I'm not reminded about that too. But that's the show. Sports and shorts of sorts. Thanks for coming out. That's episode 58 in the books. It's awesome. Trucking along, loving it. NBA playing games going down this week, starting tomorrow. Tune into my NBA weekly recap shows where we break all that down, all the fun NBA shit. Lots of stuff going on here. I broke down all the footy leagues, the Champions League, WNBA Draft. You bet I'm tuning into that after I click stop on this recording. But thanks again for coming out. Appreciate you all tuning in. Episode 58 of Sports and Shorts of Sorts in the books. Red City out.